I had been lying beside that pool longer than most people could remember. 38 years is enough time to watch hope disappear piece by piece until there is nothing left to hold on to. Every morning, I opened my eyes to the same stone ground beneath me, the same voices around the water, the same desperate waiting. I stopped counting the days a long time ago. At some point, I stopped believing anything would ever change for me. Every time the water moved, everything turned into chaos. People rushed forward, pushing, crawling, fighting to reach the edge before anyone else. I watched it happen again and again, close enough to see the desperation in their eyes, but too far to ever be first. I tried, more times than I can remember. But before I could drag my body into the water, someone stronger always stepped in ahead of me. After so many years, I stopped trying, but I never stopped watching. The place never changed. The same broken bodies, the same waiting eyes, the same silence between moments of chaos. Some had been there for years like me. Others came and left when they lost hope. I stayed. I didn't have anywhere else to go. The pool was the only place where something could still happen, even if it never happened for me. Day after day, I lay there on the stone, listening to the water, waiting for a chance that never seemed to come. I had learned to read the sound of the water before it moved. A slight shift, a ripple no one else noticed at first. Then suddenly, everyone reacted at once. Bodies pressed forward, hands pushing against stone, voices rising in urgency. I would try to move, dragging myself across the ground with what strength I had left, but it was never enough. By the time I reached the edge, someone else was already stepping into the water, and the moment was gone again. That day began like all the others. The sun rose over the pool, casting light across the same stones where I had spent years of my life. People gathered around the water, watching, waiting, hoping for the moment it would move. I lay there in my usual place, my body heavy, my thoughts quiet. I was not expecting anything different. I had learned not to expect anything at all. Then I noticed someone standing near me, watching me instead of the water. He didn't move like the others. He wasn't watching the water, and he wasn't trying to get closer to it. His eyes were on me. That alone felt strange. People usually avoided looking at me for too long, as if my condition made them uncomfortable. But he stood there, calm, as if he had been looking for me specifically. I didn't understand why. I had nothing to offer. No strength, no status, no chance of getting into the water. Still, he stepped closer and stopped right beside me. He looked down at me for a moment, as if he already knew how long I had been there. Then he asked me a question no one had ever asked before. "Do you want to be healed?" The words caught me off guard. I had heard many things beside that pool: complaints, prayers, desperate cries, but never that. For a second, I didn't know how to answer. Of course, I wanted to be healed, but wanting had never been enough. Nothing I wanted had ever changed what happened to me. I answered the only way I knew how. "Sir, I have no one to help me into the water when it is stirred. While I am trying to get in, someone else always goes down ahead of me." The words came out slowly, like something I had said too many times before. That had been my reality for years. Not just weakness, but being alone. No one to lift me, no one to wait for me. I had learned to expect nothing but the same outcome, again and again. He didn't look toward the water after I spoke. He didn't seem interested in it at all. Instead, he kept his eyes on me, steady and unshaken, as if what I had just said did not matter to him. That confused me. Everything about that place revolved around the water. Every hope, every chance, every moment of movement. Yet he stood there as if the answer I needed had nothing to do with it. For the first time in years, I felt something shift inside me. Then he spoke again, and his words were nothing like what I expected to hear. "Get up, pick up your mat and walk." For a moment, I didn't understand. My body had not moved like that in years. I had stopped imagining what it felt like to stand. The command sounded impossible, almost distant, like something meant for someone else. But the way he said, it left no space for doubt. He wasn't asking me to try. He was telling me to move. For a moment, everything inside me froze. My body, my thoughts, even my breathing seemed to stop. I had heard commands before, people telling me to move, to try harder, to crawl faster, but this felt different. There was something in his voice that did not leave room for hesitation. I looked down at my legs, the same legs that had refused to carry me for years. Nothing about them had changed. And yet, something inside me had. I placed my hands on the ground and pushed myself up, expecting the same weakness I had always felt. But this time, something was different. Strength moved through my legs in a way I had not known for years. Not slowly, not partially, completely. I felt my body respond as if it had never been broken at all. The stone beneath me no longer held me down. For the first time in nearly 4 decades, I was no longer trying to rise. I was standing. I stood there, unable to move for a moment, trying to understand what had just happened. The sounds around the pool returned all at once: voices, footsteps, the shifting of people who had seen me lying there for years. Some stepped back, others stared, unsure of what they were seeing. I looked down at my own legs, steady beneath me, no longer weak, no longer useless. The place that had held me for so long suddenly felt different. I was no longer part of it. I bent down and picked up the mat I had been lying on for years. It felt lighter than I remembered, as if it no longer belonged to the life I had just left behind. People were still watching, whispering, trying to understand what they had just seen. I took a step forward, then another, feeling the ground beneath my feet in a way I had almost forgotten. The place that had once defined me was now behind me, and I was walking away from it. As I moved through the crowd, I could feel their eyes following me. Some recognized me. I saw it in their faces. They had seen me lying there for years, always in the same place, always waiting. Now they stepped aside as I walked past them, no longer the man they had grown used to ignoring. I held the mat in my hands, still trying to understand how everything had changed so suddenly. A moment earlier, I had been helpless. Now I was moving freely among them. I kept walking, almost afraid that if I stopped, everything would return to the way it had been. My legs moved without effort, steady and strong, carrying me farther from the pool with each step. The noise behind me began to fade as I left the place where I had spent so many years. I could still feel the stone beneath my hands, the weight of waiting, the countless moments that had passed without change. But now those years felt distant, as if they belonged to another man. The streets felt different as I walked through them, as if I were seeing everything for the first time. People moved around me without knowing what had just happened, unaware that I had spent years watching life pass by from the ground. Every step reminded me that something impossible had taken place. I wasn't being carried. I wasn't dragging myself forward. I was walking. And the more I moved, the more real it became. The life I thought was over had just begun again. I stopped for a moment, turning slightly, as if I might still see him standing where I had left him. But the crowd had already closed in, and he was no longer there. I didn't even know his name. I had not asked. In all the years I had waited beside that pool, no one had ever spoken to me the way he had. No one had ever looked at me like that. And now, the man who had changed everything was gone, leaving me with a life I didn't yet understand. I stood there holding the mat in my hands, feeling the weight of a life I had just stepped out of. 38 years of waiting had ended in a moment I could not explain. The water I had trusted all those years had done nothing for me. It was his voice that changed everything. Even now, I could still hear it clearly. Get up, pick up your mat, and walk. Those words followed me as I stood there, trying to understand how a single moment could rewrite an entire life. I never went back to that place the same way again. The pool that had held my hope for so many years no longer had any power over me. What I had been waiting for was never in the water. It was in the voice of the man who chose to stop and see me when everyone else passed by. Even now, I can still feel that moment as if it had just happened. And every step I take reminds me of the day I stopped waiting and finally stood up